very much, and can I just say first of all what a great pleasure it is to be on the platform with Almas and Taj, and I think it's incredibly important that we do have a unity of the Muslim community who are, as Taj has just said, overwhelmingly working class, some of the most exploited people in this country, as well as suffering incredible levels of racism. We now have a situation where we're told that Muslims aren't allowed to pray in public in Trafalgar Square. We have a situation where they're daily subject to the Prevent agenda, and that anything that they do in solidarity with Palestine or anything else is regarded as illegitimate, not just by Farage and the far right, but actually that is also the case for much of the Labour government and for much of the Labour leadership. So I think very, very proud to be part of this platform. And also I want to talk a little bit about the very dangerous situation which I think we're now in, a dangerous situation personified by Donald J. Trump and his increasingly erratic and demented statements that he keeps coming out with. And perhaps the most chilling, you know, when we talk about Islamophobia and how it's linked to war and colonialism and empire and all those things, what did Donald Trump say on Monday? He said, we are going to wipe out a civilization that's lasted for thousands of years, and you know, when you think of the civilization that you have around Mar-a-Lago and you know what passes for government in the United States at the moment, you feel can only be superior in practically every respect. He talks about wiping out civilization. The next day, oh, it's all right, we're going to have peace talks. Then, you know, day after day, you get a different story. We're going to stand up to the Iranians, they've lost. Then the next thing is, well, we can get an agreement as long as we get lots of money for the ships to go through the Straits of Hormuz, and on and on and on. In the middle of all this, you get Melania Trump, bizarrely, appearing on television to tell us all that she hasn't had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, so make of that what you will, and whether a husband actually had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and so on. All of it, you know, it's easy to kind of laugh and cry at Trump, and it's equally appropriate to do both, probably. But there is a very serious thing here, because it isn't just about Trump as an individual, crazy though that is, but he is, in a way, a US president that really a declining US imperialism kind of deserves, in a sense. It's a fitting character, just as the emperors who ran the Roman Empire in the time of its decline. It's a fitting representation of the bankruptcy and corruption of American imperialism and where it is actually going, because we shouldn't think for a minute that this is just about Trump. This is about the American empire trying to hold on to its hegemony, trying to hold on to its power, and doing so in the most brutal way. The war, the kidnapping of the president of Venezuela, and the humiliating procession which took him to jail in New York, the blockade of Cuba, which is really like a medieval siege, the attempt to seize Greenland, which Trump describes as a badly administered sheet of ice, which tells you something. No doubt with his climate change policies, there won't be much longer of the sheet of ice if he has anything to do with it. All of these speak to a very, very serious situation when you look at the world economy and the world politically. And of course, what you've got is not just wars. We now talk about permanent wars. I mean, we talk about the war in Afghanistan, Iraq, which were deadly enough, which killed millions, or were responsible for killing millions of people and injuring millions of people. But if you look at the wars that are going on today, they are even more barbaric in all sorts of ways. You couldn't have had the bombing of Iran without the complicity over the genocide in Gaza. That 2.5 years where you murder men, women and children, where you bomb hospitals, where you bomb schools, where you don't let aid in. No wonder people think it's okay to go and bomb again in Lebanon, destroy whole villages in Lebanon, bomb the city of Beirut, and also to do the same in wiping out civilization in Iran. The figures I saw for last month in Ukraine are absolutely terrifying figures, that 30,000 Russian troops died in March alone, and 10,000 Ukrainian troops died in March alone. Now 40,000 troops, even if that is an inaccurate figure, even if it's half that or a third of that, this is thousands of people dying in a war of attrition for what? For saving NATO's face, for allowing the Western powers to keep building more and more weaponry, more and more armaments that they have, and this is what you're expected to go along with. So the wars are getting more barbaric. The wars are going to be even more barbaric. You've seen it in Sudan, you see it in the Democratic Republic of Congo, you see it across the world. And when we talk about racism, when we talk about repression in this country, both of which of course are linked to the whole question of wars, where is this racism coming from? Now we all know that there are many, many homegrown racists who are racist, who are born racist, who are conditioned as racist and will probably die as racist. And the only thing you can do is try and stand up to those people and try and defeat them. But we shouldn't assume that racism comes from the bottom in this country. It comes from the top. It comes from governments. It comes from the newspapers and the media. It comes from the billionaires who, like Elon Musk, who pursue a racist narrative time and time and time again. That is where it comes from. And if you look today, I hope very much that Viktor Orban in Hungary is driven out of office, because he's one of the nastiest anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, horrible. But what happened only this week, only days before J.D. Vance goes to do the supposed peace talks in Islamabad, what happens there? He goes to Hungary. And he gets Donald Trump on the phone at this big rally of fascists and far right, where Donald tells them how great they are, what a good guy Viktor Orban is. And J.D. Vance repeats this argument. Now, this is quite deliberate on Trump's part. If you read his national strategy document for defence, he makes it absolutely clear that he doesn't like, we don't like them either, but for different reasons. He doesn't like the liberal governments in France, in Britain, in Germany, and so on. He wants far-right governments across Europe. These are the people that he thinks will stop the supposed threat of migration and will make Europe strong again, in his kind of bizarre words. So these are the challenges that we've got, and we also have other challenges. We have the bankruptcy of a Labour government which has delivered absolutely nothing for working class people in this country. We have Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister ever. He's involved in this war. He keeps sitting there saying, oh, we want the war to end, we're not involved in it, we decided to sit it out. When bombers are going daily from RAF Fairford, are going daily to bomb the people of Iran, when he's just decided that he's not going to hand over the base in Diego Garcia because the Americans and the far right in this country don't want him to. So you have an absolute bankrupt Labour Party and Labour government. We had years of absolutely bankrupt and unpopular Tory governments with the genius of Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, I can't remember all the other ones. They've gone into the dustbin of history, I guess, like everybody else. And this has created the end of two-party politics. So what have you got? On the one hand, you've got polarisation to the right, and the previous speakers have talked about the threat of reform, and that is a very, very big threat that we face over the elections next month, but also over the coming next general election. We've also got the rise of the left. I don't want to talk about your party because we're in a fairly good mood at the moment. Let's not make it any worse. But obviously there is a sizable constituency of people who want to vote to the left, who vote for the independents like Almas in Preston, who want to vote for the Greens, who want to vote for people who put forward an alternative. And here, when you look at this, you're seeing the much more overt divisions within class society than is sometimes pronounced when you look at these politics. Reform, quite rightly, as Taj says, is a Thatcherite party. It's a party actually which believes in free markets. It's a party which has abandoned its original plans to nationalise the water industry and some other industries. It is a party which is very clearly linked to the ruling class and is made up of various people from the ruling class, including a number of ex-Tories who, it's probably one reason that Farage's support has gone down is he keeps recruiting ex-Tories without realising how unpopular that is. But if you look on the other side, you've got people who are speaking up for a different kind of alternative, for more nationalisation, for equality, for an end to poverty, for an end to the wars, and for support for the solidarity for the Palestinians. And that's very, very important. But we should recognise that we are in the middle of a huge crisis, a crisis caused by the wars, accelerated by the wars, but also which existed before that. A huge economic crisis when more and more people around the world are becoming poorer and poorer, while a tiny number of people are getting richer and richer, and where the ruling class in this country and across the world wants to make the working class pay, and it wants to make the working class pay more and more for the things that are their fault, that are the ruling class's fault. They take us into these wars, and now they say, Kemi Badenoch said it yesterday, that we will put the cap on the two-child benefit again and spend the money that we save on defence spending. In other words, who cares if your children are going hungry as long as we've got more missiles and more planes that cost £100 million each and all the other things that they're going to be doing with it. They're saying they don't have the money to pay the minimum wage. They don't have the money to pay a little bit of an increase in national insurance. They don't have the money to pay people good, decent wages. They don't have the money to build council houses. They don't have the money to nationalise the water companies, even though they're one of the biggest disgraces under neoliberal capitalism. They say they don't have the money for any of these things, but they do have the money for weapons of war. They do have the money to allow the richest people and the richest companies to pay the lowest levels of tax in this case. So they are trying to make us pay. And this is a class question. This is a question of us, the working class, against the class that exploits us and takes the wealth that we produce from us. That is what they are doing. And there's a saying, somebody told me today that it wasn't from Lenin. I always thought this saying was from Lenin, but anyway, you learn something new every day. But whoever said this, it's absolutely right, which is that you can go for decades where nothing very much happens, and then you can have weeks when decades happen. And that's what we're going through now. That's what we wake up every day and think, oh my God, we've got to organise against the war, we've got to organise against racism, we've got to support the strikers, the doctors, all the other people who are talking about going on strike. And believe me, we're going to get loads more strikes in the months and years ahead as people's living standards are hit harder and harder. And when that happens, what do we do? I think the crucial question here isn't who we vote for on May the 7th. I'm going to vote Green and Independent Socialist where I live in Hackney because I think they've got a good chance of winning, and I think anybody should vote for any party which will keep out reform. That should be the very, very basic thing. But do we seriously believe that Green councils, a few more Green MPs, are going to make the fundamental difference to a society based on war, racism and exploitation? I think if we do, then we're not looking realistically at what can happen. So where does the change come from? The change comes from what we do, whether we're organising over any of these issues or many, many other issues. The WASPy women who had their pensions stolen from them. The people who don't have enough money to be able to pay for carers. The carers who are working under such intense conditions they can't afford to do it. Those are the people that we have to begin to organise, and we have to find ways of how we organise, whether it's strike support, whether it's anti-war work, whether it's Palestine, whether it's anti-racism. And May the 16th is a crucial demonstration, a crucial date for us when we all have to be on the streets in support of the NAPA march and against the Tommy Robinson fascist demonstration, which is what it will be. All of those things, we are the people who make a difference. And I'd like to just make 2 points really in conclusion. One is that although I'm a Marxist, not a Muslim, unlike Almas, but we have a great deal, I hope, in common nonetheless. But I do like that hadith that people say, which is if you see something wrong, do something about it, to paraphrase it in not very religious terms, I suppose. You could say Rosa Luxemburg made the same point. She said, in the beginning was the deed. It's what we start off with by doing. It's us standing up. It's Rosa Parks sitting at the front of the bus. It's people saying we are going to make a stand over all these issues. It's that which really begins to make a difference. And that means we really need to grow the number of socialists that we have in this country. I was thinking about how to put this, because I know everybody has been saying in every meeting that people should join Counterfire, and that's absolutely right, and I hope that people here will join Counterfire. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking of the early British socialists. I don't know if people know of their history. You know, in the 1880s, in the early 1880s, you got the development of socialism after kind of 50 years in Britain, and everyone was very excited. Frederick Engels, Marx's long-term collaborator, was extremely excited about it. The socialists then were very small. There was only a few hundred of them, but they had what even today you would include as household names. George Bernard Shaw was a member of them. William Morris was a member of them. They had many of the artists and all sorts of people who looked towards changing society and who wanted to change society. Had Annie Besant, who was the woman who helped to organise the matchwomen's strike in 1888. Had Eleanor Marx, the youngest daughter of Karl Marx, who again was instrumental in the strikes of the gas workers in the late 1880s during the new unions. All of those people understood it wasn't a question of just relying on somebody else to change things. It was a question of what we can do and whether collectively putting across socialist ideas. They also did the free speech movement, the Irish Home Rule movement, all of the different politics came together. What did they do? They said we've got to organise in order to change things. And that is what we have to take from today. So to me, the socialists have to get much, much bigger in terms of number here. Marxism has to be a much more important part of the socialist and left-wing movement in this country than it is at the moment. When I joined the socialist movement many, many years ago, the Communist Party in this country had 30,000 members. I don't know how many it has now, but it has only a fraction of that. The left has been in decline during the period of neoliberalism. We have to change that. We have to build mass movements, but we also need a much stronger socialist left. So I hope you will organise. I hope all of us will go away from here and organise against war, against racism, against fascism, but I hope also you will become committed and organised socialists, because we need so many people to change the society for the better and for the good.